we weep, not just because of the separation of our loved one, but because of the questions that death brings. Questions like, why? Why him? And why now? These were the heartfelt words that the Reverend Brother David Love spoke at the funeral of his best friend, Randy Stone. Why indeed was Randy being lowered into the cold, dark Missouri ground as his friend and spiritual advisor gave such a heartfelt, emotional eulogy? Would the answer lie somewhere in the hundreds of mourners that had gathered to see Randy off to the afterlife? Or do we never know how we've ultimately arrived here? Tune in to Evil Done Badly, the internet's worst true crime podcast, to find out the answer to these burning questions. Now cue the theme music. This episode is supported by the Wide World of Paranormal Investigations group on Facebook. They have almost 10,000 members and cover a wide range of topics, such as aliens, witchcraft, conspiracy theories, the occult, and many other fascinating subjects. Join up today and enjoy the discussion. Now back to the show. Randy Stone was a well-known family man from Independence, Missouri. He was a very successful insurance agent, but let's not hold that against him. A devoted husband, he also drove his church's Sunday school bus, and as well as being the pastor's best friend, he would advise the church on financial issues. So he was well known in the community, and I imagine church financial issues go something like this. Hey, what the fuck are we going to spend all this money on? I'd like a new Cadillac. Hey, you over there, would you like a new Cadillac? Sure, yay! Cadillacs for everybody, woo! Randy was the type of guy who would write poetry for his wife, Teresa, and he had 2 children. They had known each other since childhood and got married when he returned from the Marines in 1990. By all accounts, he seemed to be a pretty swell guy. I mean, he wrote poetry, for fuck's sakes. If that doesn't scream swell guy, I don't know what does. Teresa was Randy's business partner as well as a wife, and worked in one of his offices as an insurance agent, allowing Randy more time to manage the growing business. Both Randy and Teresa were heavily involved in the New Hope Baptist Church. Now, you know it's a classy church because they named it after a Star Wars movie. So, I mean, that's all you need to know. They were married in that church, and Teresa helped in the kitchen and sang in the choir. So, I mean, this is a picture-perfect family. You know, this is all going really great. They've got the American dream going on, and they're going to live happily ever after, and that's the end of our episode. Yay! Oh, no. No, they did not. Don't be silly. I already told you Randy was dead. So there's a bit of a snag in this fairy tale somewhere. So let's move along and see what we can dig up on these people. The snag. The snag himself would arrive in 1999 when the New Hope Baptist Church would employ a new, hip, well-dressed pastor by the name of Reverend David Love. With a name like that, you know he's quite the smooth player, or a professional wrestler, or both. This guy has got it going on. He is moving and he is shaking. Now, Brother Love was so smooth, even Randy would be quite smitten with him. He especially liked Brother Love's hardline interpretation of Baptist Christianity. I mean, I get where he's coming from. I know I prefer a rigorous Baptist curriculum, as opposed to the soft-boiled Southern Baptist ministry and its nuanced, laissez-faire brand of worship. That's all horseshit. I have no idea what I'm talking about. All I know is Randy likes God, and he likes how Brother Love spits out God's praises. It doesn't help that Mr. Love has charisma oozing out of his Brill cream soaked pores, and he wears tailored suits. Brother Love was a big inspiration for Randy, and he worshipped the ground that he walked on. Holy cow, he is head over heels smitten with this guy. He's got quite the man crush on him. Brother Love was a perfect preacher. He was a perfect preacher if you ignore the fact that $30,000 disappeared from a fund for missionary salaries at another church in the mid-90s. Now, we're not going to talk about that. We've swept that under the rug. He was married, and he was a devoted husband. His wife, Kim, was a fierce Christian and very, very forgiving. She was forgiving, but yet spent most of her time shooing women away from her delectable preacher spouse. The ladies were also very smitten with Mr. Love, and I don't think it was because of his piety. On March 31st, 2010, Teresa pulled into her parking spot at the insurance company in the late afternoon. The only other car there was her husband's. But being the hard worker that he was, it was no surprise that he would be the last one left at the office. She glanced at her husband's outside window on the way and found it odd that the blind had been pulled down. She put her key in the outside lock and noticed that the deadbolt hadn't been engaged either, which was also very peculiar. Now, she would call out for Randy, but she would receive no answer. She looked in Randy's office, yet Randy was not there. Where could he be? She made her way down the hall to check in to her office to make sure everything was okay. Now, she looked in there and she noticed that lying next to the dead body on the floor was a copy machine. The copy machine remained happily in idle mode as it was covered in blood splatter, and the copy machine didn't care that the body of Randy Stone was laying dead next to it. But Teresa did. Randy was laying there doing nothing as dried blood seeped from his ear and his face laid in a bloody puddle. Teresa yelled for him to wake up, but he didn't move. She would then call her parents and 911. In that order. And she would tell them about Randy lying incapacitated on the floor. She would tell her parents that Randy had been shot. She would tell 911 that Randy had blood burbling out of his ear. Now, this small discrepancy will be used against her later, so you can kind of see where this is going. There's no big surprises in this story, but it is a good story. The 911 operator told her to calm the fuck down and go wait outside until help arrived. Someone from the church would stop by, and Teresa would mention that Randy was lying dead on the floor inside, or at least shot. The church member then went inside, confirmed that Randy was dead, and came out and said so. Teresa then screamed, "No!" and collapsed into this person's arms. There's no mention of whether this person was cute or not. The call to Teresa's parents fired up the gossip wagon, and people started showing up at the insurance company to see what was up. It wasn't long before Kim Love arrived, gave Teresa a hug, and said, "I'm here for you. I'm praying for you, and This is terrible. She gave Teresa a ride to the nearest restroom. I guess the one at the insurance company was off limits due to there being a dead guy in there. And on the ride, it occurred to Kim that, hey, Teresa is not acting like a normal, grief stricken wife should. The wife of a newly dead guy that she dearly loved should be a bit more grief stricken. It didn't seem like much of a stretch that just maybe Teresa wasn't as stricken as she should be, and maybe just had something to do with Randy lying on the ground with blood burbling out of his ear. It's a very curious circumstance indeed. Upon examination of the crime scene, it became obvious that Randy had been shot by someone he felt comfortable with. There was no evidence of any struggle, and he had been shot in the head while his back was turned. It didn't seem at all random, and there was $151 in cash sitting on a nearby desk, so robbery was pretty much immediately ruled out as well. Somebody wanted specifically Randy to be the dead guy, and now Randy was dead. Now, who had the motive to want this swell man to be dead? You're thinking that it's probably the wife. Well, the murder occurred in the wife's office, but as far as we know, she actually wasn't there at the time. But what we do know is that Teresa had some trash in her basket. A few feet away from Randy's dead body was a waste paper basket with slivers of ripped paper in it. Investigators took it upon themselves to reassemble the slivers of paper into a note. A note from someone professing their undying love for Teresa, and that when they are fully together, their days will be exciting and loaded with romantic surprises. This implies that the letter writer and Teresa are not currently together, so that immediately rules out that it could have been a note from her current poetry writing husband. That would be dead, lifeless Randy did not write the note. So after about 10 minutes of detective work, we've already found out that someone is Randy for Randy's wife, who's not Randy. This Randy, non-Randy, Randy's wife admirer, might have a possible motive to want to rub out Randy. But who could that be? When first interviewed by police, Teresa admitted that they were going through a few things financially. But apart from that, they were very much in love. When asked about the note, Teresa first said she didn't know anything about it. The police then left her alone for a bit while they went to get a picture of the note. While they were gone, she clearly whispered to herself, "Oh great, I forgot about that," as she was being monitored by a hidden camera. When shown the note, she made up some bullshit story about a secret admirer who left the note on her car years ago, and it just happened to wind up in her waste paper basket today. Who are you trying to fool here, Teresa? They knew Teresa had something to do with Randy's murder, but they needed something more concrete before they could proceed. So they pressed on with the interview. Eventually, they would worm it out of her that she was banging Brother Love, and for a long time, like 11 years long. Not all in one go, but pretty much whenever they got the chance to screw behind their spouse's back, they did. She was actually knocked up by Brother Love at one point, and somehow managed to convince poor dead Randy that, oh, it's yours, even though you've had a vasectomy, so it must have grown back together, and God made it be so, and it's some sort of miracle. And as she was, trying to fumble her way through that, she wound up miscarrying, and that was the end of that setback. So she just went back to banging Brother Love and occasionally her husband. While she admitted that she had been involved in a decade-long affair with Brother Love, she wouldn't take responsibility for the death of Randy. When she was asked how she knew Randy was shot, in reference to what she had earlier told her parents, she would resist. But after a long, grueling interview session, she would eventually relent and state that Brother Love had texted her that Randy had been shot. It became obvious pretty quickly that she had no qualms about chucking David Love under the bus. No matter how fucking sexy he was just chucked right under there. Under police pressure, they got Teresa to agree to call Brother Love and see if she could weasel a confession out of him. Now, I'm not sure this is the best time to do it, but she called him at 12:43 a.m. after being interviewed all day, and predictably, the wife of David Love, Kim, was upset that the woman her husband was nailing was calling him in the wee hours of the morning. He was unable to speak honestly with Kim hanging around, but he didn't seem to suspect anything. But he did get a little heated and stated that, "She's not going to pin this on me, no sir," and ran out to the car to drive over to Teresa's house to smooth things over with Kim in tow. So she's tagging along. And now Brother Love was already being surveilled because, well, he looks pretty fucking guilty even without saying anything. So it only took a few minutes for him to be pulled over and arrested. Brother Love and his wife, who was not considered a suspect, were brought to the station for questioning. David Love and Teresa would have one last final meeting before he went in for questioning. Teresa was pretty well strung out by then and said, "I told him everything." And David, well, he appeared unmoved and told her not to worry about it, and that, "Hey, I'll take care of everything." What a cocky prick this guy is. Now, David refused to be interviewed without a lawyer and was handcuffed and taken away to a jail cell. He was told to expect to be charged with murder the next day. Now, David's wife, Kim, was a little more cooperative. She knew her preacher husband was a hot commodity, and she feared other women. She had caught him texting flirty messages to another woman late one night. He denied anything was going on, and immediately took texting off his cell phone plan to prove his love for her. A year later, she caught him texting again, this time on a disposable cell phone he had hidden in the garage. She claimed that the Lord helped her find it after praying. Hallelujah! So that's a pro tip for you there. If you ever misplace a phone, just ask God for help. He's got nothing better to do. He'll help you find it. Despite the divine intervention, David would not come completely clean. He admitted to texting Teresa, but only because he was counseling her about her marriage. Like, what the fuck? Who are you trying to fool, Jesus boy? Christ. Her suspicions would only grow as the years went on. David had given her a $50 ring, only for her to find out that he had bought a $300 ring on the same receipt. When she Googled the ring, she found out that it was the same one Teresa was wearing. David would still insist that the relationship wasn't physical. As well as being a liar, he's also quite the cheap ass, apparently. As Kim was leaving the station, she left the police with a list of telephone numbers she had copied down from the memory of David's burner phone. They were unable to press charges like they said they were. They wouldn't press them the next day because the investigation was still ongoing and they didn't have enough evidence to close the case. David's computer and cell phone records were still being examined, so Brother Love had to be set free. He would make statements to the church and media about his affair, but insisted that he had nothing to do with Randy's death. He would then take his brother and passport and slip casually out of town. A series of old emails came to light, showing that Randy and Brother Love had been having a falling out in the weeks before the murder. Randy had quit the church and could have used the dirt he had on David Love to get him fired. There was some financial stuff going on behind the scenes, some very questionable. And David Love's kid had a secret DUI that looks really bad. So that was kept a secret. And not to mention all the sex Brother David Love was having with some number of people's spouses, and maybe even some single people, I don't know. He seems like quite the player. David Love did not like the idea of any of this stuff coming to light. Does that prove anything? Nope. But it does move Brother Love right to the top of the suspect list. Randy leaving the church also meant that David wouldn't have as easy access to Teresa, because, well, he wanted to bang her every time he got the chance. Now he probably wouldn't be able to, and that would be very inconvenient. So, either way, it was all looking kind of fishy for David Love. On top of that, Teresa was also under the impression that she would be the beneficiary of Randy's life insurance policy, which was over $500,000. But unbeknownst to her, Randy had taken her off the policy, and his kids were named beneficiaries. He had his suspicions that Teresa was a bit of a skank, so Teresa has her own reason for wanting Randy dead. But she didn't know that that was useless, so that all backfired on her nicely. That is a small piece of justice right there. Score one for Randy. Ooh, I love that. A month after the killing, David Love had relocated to South Carolina and found work as a long-haul trucker. The authorities finally felt that they had built a strong enough case to get a conviction and were ready to pounce. David's boss had called him in to come sign some paperwork. So David ran home first and got his wife. And I should just note here, it's the same wife, Kim. She's still with him through all of this. She's very loyal and very fiercely Christian, and somehow was able to justify staying with this asshole. Whatever. Either way, David was being called in, and he figured the gig was up. And the gig was indeed up. He was arrested and told the police that he wanted a lawyer because I don't trust you guys. Yep. Sound logic there. 8 months later, Teresa would be very cooperative with prosecutors in hopes of getting a lenient sentence. She admitted that she gave David the codes to her garage and the alarm system, and that she sent him a text stating, "I want him dead. I just want him out of my life." Shit. Yeah, it's looking bad for you, Teresa. David's defense involved implicating Teresa and tearing apart her testimony. As more evidence came to light, things did not look very good for Brother Love at all. But with Teresa incriminating herself, it looked more and more like David could be able to wiggle out of his potential first-degree conviction. So the prosecutors proposed a deal if he would plead guilty. The deal being second-degree murder. He had 3 days to accept the bargain. And he said, Absolutely not. And this was his initial reaction, and he was, defiant. And I can just picture this arrogant bastard going off on some self righteous sermon about God and forgiveness and principle and shit. Either way, that wouldn't last long because over the weekend, the smooth talking, charismatic sex machine known as David Love called his lawyer and started crying. I'm not an innocent man. I'll take it. I'll take the deal. Now, the plea deal had to be kept quiet as to not stir up the media and cause a mistrial, and they would have to start over somewhere else if that happened, with prosecutors implying the sentencing could even be more lenient if they could get it over with quickly and without causing a fuss. Now, they did it. They went in, and it took about 30 minutes for David Love to plead guilty and get sentenced to life in prison. Now, they had put one over on the media right there. That was a pretty good story they really missed out on. But they would not be as silent for the trial of Teresa Stone. A media frenzy ensued as the evidence against her was spelled out by prosecutors. They even threw the idea of her getting pulled off the insurance policy back in her face. That is so fucking awesome. You're the man, Randy. It's like, nope, she didn't trust you. Nope, he didn't trust you, and can you fucking blame him? Nope, because you're a big lying skank. Yep. So the defense talked about how she was a first-time offender and going back to school to be a medical technician. Well, thank God for that. She's going to be one hell of a medical technician. You really want her looking after your stuff. In the end, she received the harshest penalty possible for conspiring to kill her husband, which was 8 years in jail. To end on a positive note here, they built a New Hope Baptist Church, which included the Randy Stone Memorial Pavilion. I don't know what happened to the old one. I hope you've enjoyed this terribly done episode of Evil Done Badly, the worst true crime podcast on the internet. If you would like to suggest topics for future episodes, you can reach me on Instagram at EvilDoneBadly or by email at evildonebadly@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. I will see you next time, and check out the wide world of paranormal investigations on Facebook. You won't regret it. See you later.